Hello, gentlemen.
I'm
Just gentlemen.
back.
Literally gentlemen.
The man of gentles.
What's up? We're actually
Not
doing
Gentiles.
these episodes back to back, so it is again just me and Brian. What's up,
We're
Brian?
here. Where's Savon? Dude ghosted on us.
Yeah. What did he say he had to do?
Things that are more fun than us, than this.
That doesn't exist.
It exists in much abundance, Wesley. Let me tell you. I know from experience.
How can you experience other things besides?
You could be
I
cutting
understand.
grass right now, and I'd be like, "You made the right choice."
No
Savon.
way. No way. I'll never agree to that. All right. Well, welcome to episode 153. We're going to talk about a movie that I've been wanting to see for a while, and it finally came out on Netflix. We're going to talk about Godzilla Minus One.
Ooh, it just dropped out of nowhere too.
It did. I didn't know it was coming.
No one knew. And I was literally like talking with some friends at a bar a couple days before it happened. We were like, yeah, I can't wait till they release Godzilla Minus One again, because it had a very tiny window last year. It played in like 5 theaters in America for 1 week or something like that.
Did you see it?
No one saw it, because
So I thought
we didn't even know it was happening.
Because I feel like I asked you about it like a month ago, and you were like, "Yeah, I saw it and it was great," but maybe I made that up in my head.
I think you did.
Okay.
I think you did.
What did you say when I asked you if you had seen it? Did you say
I
no?
said
I
I heard it was great,
Okay.
and no one saw it.
Okay. In my head, I turned that into Brian, our resident movie buff, probably found a way to see it, and he's got access to all these like smaller theaters in New York. Maybe he found a way to see it.
I like that you just imagine that I accomplish all these things with my great superpowers that I
Yes.
don't actually have.
And because you're in New York,
So please doing that. Please write the tale of Brian later in my life.
I have a whole myth, in my head.
mythology.
About it.
Yes, yeah. I want these tales to be told of how
I
I
am
leap
Homer
tall
and
buildings.
you are Odysseus. We're good to go here.
Odysseus.
Yeah, apparently
Is
you're
he
supposed
a
to say
character
Odysseus.
in Dr. Seuss now?
No, but if Zeus is said Zeus, why wouldn't Odysseus be pronounced Odysseus?
Don't you mean Zeus?
No, I am like 80% sure that it's really supposed to be pronounced Odysseus, and we've just been pronouncing it wrong our whole lives.
Well,
Only
I've been
80% though.
saying Zendaya for a long time.
It's
until
Zendaya.
I was corrected on this show, so
Yeah, she says Zendaya.
I will gladly take the L.
You also say scarcity. Is that really how you say it?
Scarcity.
Yeah,
Scarcity.
I say scarcity. Yeah,
Scarce.
You say
Scarce?
scarcity. Yeah, you say
You
something
know,
is scarce.
Like Scarface.
Is that a
Scarce?
New Jersey pronunciation?
Scarcity? I don't know. That's how I pronounce it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Let's move on.
If you understand me, it's working.
I understand. It's fine. Do you pronounce water the New Jersey way
Yeah, waiter.
or orange? Waiter. How do you say orange?
Orangi. Yeah, you know what I mean. You get it.
I got it. How do New Jerseyans say orange? That thing threw me off every time I was at Penn.
Orange.
Orange. That's right.
Orange.
It's so weird. It's accepted. I looked it up in the dictionary because I was so thrown off by it.
And it's not like New Jersey is the state of oranges. That's Florida and maybe California.
Yep.
But there are a number of towns in where I'm from in Jersey.
Really? With orange
that
in the
are
name.
orange. South Orange, West Orange, East Orange, Orange. Why? They ain't no oranges there. I'll tell you that.
Maybe they're Dutch settled.
What does that have to do with the Dutch, man?
Because the Dutch were all about orange. Like William of Orange.
Mean windmill.
It was not William of Orange. Sorry, William. I don't know. Whatever. The Dutch William. He took orange as color. That's why their sporting teams were orange.
They are blue and orange. That's true. They're
sporting teams though, but their flag is not.
I learned things on this podcast. Savon, you're missing out. You're actually getting dumber by not being here, Savon. All these things that you could learn.
We just wasted so much time for our listeners. I'm sorry, listeners. This is what happens when we don't have Savon to rein us in.
Is that his role?
It's just the way it goes.
I guess it is. He kind of lays the smacketh down at times.
We're not quite as over the top and silly when he's around, I feel like. All right, let's talk about it, because I really, really did enjoy a lot about this movie. I don't think it was a perfect movie, but certainly a cool movie. I think if you're rule of cool, like Savan likes to say, this one is for you for sure. And some great character moments and plot moments too. So we'll get into it. So a long time ago, in a land far, far away, Peter Jackson started making some King Kong movies. Some other people in like 2014 started remaking some Godzilla movies, and all of these are American-produced big action pieces. In kind of the vein of Battleship and I don't know, just major movies. Pacific Rim.
In the vein of Battleship.
Yeah,
Ouch.
an action movie. Some semblance of a story, some
But
semblance
really,
of
it's built
characters.
around a toy.
It's really, it's just to get you to buy Godzilla toys, basically, right? And they sort of get a little bit sillier and sillier and sillier, as you might imagine, right? Like you're trying to produce a movie every year or two, and eventually you merge the universes of Kong and Godzilla, and they have like a face-off in 2021, and then earlier this year, they made a movie called what was it called? Godzilla X Kong: A New Empire.
Maybe it's Godzilla times Kong.
Maybe Godzilla times Kong, like they're being multiplied somehow.
Yeah. I think they team up in that movie, right? Is
I don't know.
that why it's an X?
I'm not sure. Maybe it's and he turns purple, and there's lots of things going on there, and it's not. I don't think people would say it's like serious. It's fun, maybe it's action packed, but it's clearly not like serious. Like there wasn't a ton of substance maybe to those movies, and I don't think they got reviewed super well, especially the later movies. But Brian, this is a very different feeling movie. So I wanted to see, how would you describe Godzilla Minus One sort of in comparison to those MonsterVerse movies we've been seeing for the past, 5, 6, 7, 8 years?
Well, considering that watching Godzilla Minus One, I was racking my brain to see if I could even remember watching any Godzilla movies. And I can't for the life of me remember a single plot line. Like I just vaguely remember Bryan Cranston being in one of those Godzilla movies.
He was in one of those early, like 2014 movies.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure I did watch it. I have no idea what happens in that movie. No idea. And I'm pretty sure I watched it because of Bryan Cranston. And so me trying to compare Godzilla Minus One is basically me comparing Godzilla Minus One to a blank slate because
Okay.
I do not know. However, I will say that, as far as kaiju type movies or kaiju type media, so like let's throw in King Kong in that category. Let's throw in Pacific Rim, which is definitely a take on kaiju. Let's throw in Neon Genesis Evangelion, the famous anime, right? Where
late 90s, I think.
Late 90s, one of the greats. I highly recommend people go and watch that. Though it absolutely does not make any sense by the end of it.
It makes no
absolute
sense.
Bonkers.
Don't go watch it.
Go watch it.
Go watch it. It's not good.
These are the kind of takes you get here on Confidently Wrong. Go watch it. Don't go watch it. So like in that pantheon of kaiju, right? Godzilla Minus One, very, very different. It feels very different. It's this movie is less about seeing the all-out destruction. It's not a disaster movie the way a lot of, I think, American kaiju stuff is, like seeing Godzilla walk through New York City and just tear shit down, right? We don't,
I mean,
we really see very little. I think it's a minuscule amount in this movie, right? Like they give it to you just to emphasize how powerful Godzilla is, and then he's out. And then so also it's not a kaiju fight, right? There's no Godzilla versus Mothra here. There's no Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. There are no Pacific Rim design mechs to face the kaiju, right? In hand-to-hand combat or nothing crazy like that. There's no giant-sized Ultraman. It is just the people of Japan, the people of Tokyo, in the aftermath of World War II, confronting Godzilla for the very first time, right, in their history. So in a way, this is a kind of a prequel. It's kind of a reset movie. It's a perfect jumping off point for anybody that is Godzilla curious but has never jumped in. This is a perfect place to jump in.
Yeah, it's a
because,
reboot.
yeah,
You don't have to have watched any previous Godzilla at all.
and 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 as I said, like, it doesn't have all these other trappings of other kaiju movies, so it's able to really revolve around its own story that it's telling, which I think is actually kind of substantive. Talk about substance, right? They're really going for substance
Yeah.
in terms of the themes that are being played out here, and how they're looking at this threat, right? It's more about the threat that it causes to the Japanese people rather than just the monster in and of itself.
I would only slightly disagree in that I think it actually is about the destructive nature of Godzilla and the monster himself and all of that. But well, I think we'll get into that a little bit. I wanted to also try and figure out a
Thanks
little
for
bit.
contradicting me right away. Jeez,
Yeah.
Wes.
No, I
See it, don't go see it.
I had read, I think, that people talked about this movie who got to see it in that kind of limited run as sort of a masterpiece in like not necessarily always having to show the monster or like using the monster in like a specific way and kind of in short bursts. And I think they did that, but there's also they do show a lot of destruction. I mean, countless buildings are toppled. There's a scene where Godzilla you actually don't see him do it, but you see the aftermath of it, which is you see a ship flying low through the air at a rate of speed. It's moving and it crashes into a bunch of buildings. You see kind of the effects of like basically an atomic bomb blast kind of destroy a whole neighborhood block and the people and the things that are in there. You know, the tail causes damage. You see him attack different like battleships and things. So I was sort of expecting, you know, Godzilla to not really show up until maybe like the second half of the movie or to like just be like in the beginning and then maybe like the middle and the end. But no, like Godzilla shows up quite a number of times and does
He
a lot
shows
of
up right
damage.
away in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Too.
And then but you're right. He does kind of like he takes his licks a couple of times. He kind of slinks away and then like regroups and then comes back or goes on to another area, right? And so we see kind of like the Godzilla attack like this like remote island and then eventually makes his way to like mainland Japan. So I do think there is a lot more of Godzilla in this movie than I sort of expected, given what people said about it. But I could see it also as, like you said, it was kind of restrained in that he wasn't in every scene. It wasn't like always about Godzilla. Like there were other like things going on within the movie. I do want to address the title. So Godzilla.
What is -1? What are we minusing? I watched 2 hours of this movie and I couldn't for the life of me figure out what was being subtracted.
Yeah, so I was in the same boat. I was like, what is the -1 here? So eventually I took some time, I looked it up, and what the creator said is basically that and I don't have his name offhand. It's a, you know, it's a Japanese director. That it kind of describes the state of Japan at this time. So coming out of World War II, a lot of people sort of describe that as like a reset point, right? Like Japan is turning into a democracy, but they're also like picking up all the pieces. There's nothing going for them. They have no momentum coming out of this like pretty brutal war for them, in which they were, you know, somewhat, you know, not somewhat, they were aggressive. They were trying to be imperialistic, yada, yada, yada. And so they're at level 0. After that, right, immediately following that, this is when Godzilla comes in and is about to cause more destruction. And so it's kind of this idea that like Japan is actually about to go into the negative in terms of like their ability, their society, their civilization, their scale, and all of that. So Godzilla is the one like as the threat that's going to take down basically like their way of life and pushing them back even further into destruction. Yeah.
So really the title should be Japan -1. Like
Japan
Godzilla +1, Japan -1.
Yes, Godzilla +1. All right, so that's where the title comes from. So it kind of gives you a sense, though, I think, of how the creator and director was thinking about this as a society movie, right? Like it's what does Godzilla tell us about our society? What does where what can we explore in terms of like their national mindset and their individual mindsets coming out of such a like chaotic time, but also I don't know if you want to call it embarrassing, but like a national right like downturn at that point.
A
They
humbling moment for
yeah
Japan. And that this is post World War II, or
yep
that kind of like a little bit of the very end of World War II and then the aftermath. And so this movie is also very much a period piece and able to ruminate on kind of like what that period was like for Japan. And of course, you know, all of that is prescient for probably how they want to see themselves now.
yeah. All right, let's get into it. So let's talk about actually some of that mentality coming out of World War II, where you know Japan, from my understanding, like I'm not a World War II expert in terms of Japan or anything, but they had been like fierce fighters, right, and had a lot of uh I think they have like this samurai era mentality that sort of carries over into this time around like, you know, going out in like a suicide attack is like honorable, dying in battle is honorable, fighting to the last moment, it doesn't matter like what your odds are, like you are fighting for your country, for your people, for yourself, for your honor, yada yada yada, right? And there's this big uh push around that to try and expand Japan's empire at this time. Um and it doesn't work out for them, right? US drops a bomb on them or two bombs on them, atomic bombs on them, and their society is in shambles. They're going to need a huge reconstruction effort, you know, coming up, and individual citizens are also trying to pick up the pieces of their lives because they're struggling with like what do you do with the destroyed city? What do you do when your home is destroyed, and how do you deal with so many people who you've lost, both neighbors and sons and families and things like that. And you know the main guy, what was his name?
Shikamisharu. Oops.
What? Shikushima, something like
Maybe
that.
I should have kept that to my my inner monologue.
Godzilla Minus One.
Shishkamisha?
What is his name? I think it's Shikushima.
Why do I keep trying?
Shikishima. Okay, so Shikishima, he's a pilot. He was supposed to be a kamikaze pilot and didn't actually commit suicide. He kind of chickens out and says like my plane is broken and lands at like an airfield like out of the way where he wouldn't have to be involved in any battles. And he comes back and he's actually subjected to a neighbor who calls him out on it and says like you should not have come back alive. It's not fair that you are alive and all of the people here are dead. And like there's obviously some logical like disconnect there, like him dying would not have saved like the people in this village or this town that had gotten bombed, but you know there was this idea around like it's dishonorable to not give everything you have, including your life, in support of your country, right? So I don't know. What did you take away from that?
We like, and for those of you who watched Oppenheimer, which I rewatched recently, we also know from that movie, and I think Godzilla Minus One is actually kind of the perfect companion piece to Oppenheimer. Hear me out.
They're a box set.
Yeah. Double listing. What do they call it when they have like two movies back to back? I forget what that's called.
A double header.
A double-headed kaiju. So in Oppenheimer, they talk about how, or they make the argument. Americans make the argument.
Double feature, right?
Double feature. There we go.
Double feature. I got it.
Double features.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I only have one feature, and so I'm not used to the double. Anyway, Oppenheimer, Americans talk about, or they make the argument to justify dropping the atomic bomb, saying like, we've already won this war, but Japan will not surrender. They're not going to surrender unless we show them this devastating power and show it to them twice, and that's how they're going to surrender, right? So we sort of like get this perspective, like us Westerners, we sort of can know this perspective that exists in Godzilla Minus One, is that, you know, they're gonna go out fighting no matter what. They're Josh Hart and the New York Knicks here. Like they will not rest, even if it's futile. even
Yeah.
if it's futile. And anything less than that is dishonorable. Is you might as well be dead,
Yeah.
right? And that's the case for Shikishima, right? Like he's, he in a way is treated like a deserter
Yeah.
because he did not do his duty. And then he also had an opportunity to, to take on Godzilla when he first sees him at the beginning of the movie, fire off some guns. He's shook and
Right.
can't do it.
No.
And everybody dies in Godzilla's wake except for him and this one other guy. And of course, he is given a lot of shit for it, and he has to deal with that guilt this whole time. So throughout the entire
Which is like kind
Godzilla
of
Minus
crazy.
One,
Like I understand it, but at the same time, he's doing the math of like none of that would have made a difference.
yeah,
Right?
and
He's like,
they
me
don't
throwing
say
away.
that. I
Yeah.
like that they don't say that specifically, but honestly, yeah, he would have died too. It
Yeah.
wouldn't have mattered because Godzilla was too powerful anyway. But here's the thing though. We get early on in the movie that there's a person here and there who thinks like, yeah, why should you have to die a pointless death?
Yeah. So
and
it's not a universally held belief, but people aren't really allowed to say it either.
they're not open about it. And so there are these undercurrents in the movie like, hey, the Japanese government, says this one thing, but they've given us bad tanks and they're putting us in a losing situation. We don't love the fact that they want us to keep doing this stuff. And so there are some people out there, and throughout the movie, it becomes a question for Chikishima whether he can regain his honor, if he can unload the guilt and the burden that he's left with. And then for everybody else who survived the war, who survived air raids, we see a very ravaged Tokyo that was hit by massive air raids. Like we don't even know about atomic bombs being dropped in Hiroshima or Nagasaki, right? Like that's not even mentioned. And and I will say, like, I think part of that is because Godzilla is the atomic bomb in this. Like, and that's, I think traditionally that is the genesis of the whole kaiju idea. It's always been sort of a metaphor for the atomic bomb and how Japan deals with that. So anyway, so Shikishima, is going through a major character arc throughout the course of this movie where him and the other survivors of World War II are dealing with survivor's guilt, essentially. And they're trying to figure out how do they pick up the pieces when a lot of them feel like they don't deserve to live. They don't know why they're allowed to live. They don't feel like they have the right to hope for life or hope for the future. But there are people here and there throughout the movie who feel otherwise and who are trying to show the Japanese people like we have this opportunity to live and we should embrace it.
For sure. I like how you described that. I think there's a lot in there that's like we can pick apart if we were like film study students. And I think there's also, like you said, there's this undercurrent or these like moments where you're starting to see like, ooh, like, are we actually accepting this idea that like we must give our lives in order to be honorable, or that we should sacrifice ourselves? And there's sort of this push and pull of, in some moments, the movie celebrates those who volunteer for that sort of thing, right? Who volunteer for this mission against all odds. And at the same time, it also celebrates the moments where characters find a way to like do their job or carry out their mission in a way that doesn't get them killed. Right? That you're not just making a sacrifice because you're making a sacrifice. And so it's like interesting that movie kind of plays with that idea a little bit and doesn't necessarily say like one way like doesn't say like, oh, that way is stupid and this way is great, or this way is stupid and that way is great. Just it kind of gives you both sides of that coin around like how sort of each one plays out. So I like that kind of point that you've made here.
Brian +1.
Wesley -1. Godzilla itself, or himself, is designed a little bit differently in this one than we started seeing in previous ones. I mean, he still looks like a dinosaur with spikes on his back and things like that, and he's got like a flamethrower heat something that comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, very very Super Saiyan like.
Yeah,
shooting the beam cannon out of his mouth.
that was pretty cool. What did you think of this? I wanted to just say, like, for me, Godzilla in this one was like pretty cool. It like very scary. He in the beginning of the movie, and I don't think this is a spoiler. In the beginning of the movie, he's just chomping dudes. He's stepping on them. He's like mad and angry. He is a villain in this thing, and like an incomparable one. You can't do anything against him. So I don't know,
But
Brian,
he's
what do you
like
think?
baby Godzilla in the beginning, which was kind of interesting. And you said this in the text chat, like, oh, he's like this is like Jurassic Park T-Rex style. And like in the beginning of the movie, I'm like, why? Yeah, why is he like a T-Rex? He's just like stomping through the jungle. He looks kind of small. I'm like, that can't be right. But then, he goes away and comes back, and he's much bigger when he comes back. So it's actually like we got baby Godzilla who gets his first taste of man flesh and then wants some more later as a teenage Godzilla maybe we
Yeah.
haven't even seen the adult version. But it is pretty cool because compared to American made Godzilla movies where they go all in on CG to create maybe what is more realistic. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not that it's more realistic, but it's less. It doesn't look like the guy in the Godzilla costume, like the OG Godzilla movies, right? Like clearly the American Godzillas are trying to steer clear of that. But here in Godzilla Minus One, they embrace that look. So like the face of Godzilla is definitely the same face as
more
the
rounded
guy in the Godzilla suit. Yeah, it's rounded. He's got like the eyes that are hiding behind the Barney type snout, like Barney the dinosaur. You know what I mean? Like so like slightly cartoonish, but with all the textures and tight details that you'd expect from like the American CG versions of Godzilla. And I think that melding of the two styles is pretty cool here. Like to me, it actually gave Godzilla way more personality than the American version. So like in the movie, like when they start attacking him, they're like, "Oh my god, Godzilla's ticked off," and I felt that way about Godzilla. Like he is ticked off there. Like he is not just this lumbering giant animal that's just knocking shit over. No, like this felt more like a real animal, right? And real animals have emotions also. And I think that was just a cool way to see Godzilla operate.
Yeah, there are times where he's like pissed.
Yeah. And then also he's got all these other abilities too, right? So like he's got the beam cannon thing, right? And like they know the beam cannon is coming out because his Stegosaurus plate tails are like lighting up,
and they like
he's like
they like
yeah, he's charging up. He's like your iPhone, like like where's the deep sea plug that he's attached to? And then in the middle of the movie, they actually get is it a mine into Godzilla's mouth? And fire a giant Navy ship gun to detonate said mine while it's latched into the teeth of Godzilla and his face explodes. Which is so that is rule of cool. That is rule of cool. But
what's cooler is what happens right after.
Yeah, what's cooler is apparently Godzilla is part Wolverine and he regenerates his face like right after.
Yeah.
He's got some scarring, which was also cool. He's got some scarring too. Like you can tell he's taking the licks. Yeah, and he's regenerating, but he's still vulnerable in some shape or form.
It
right?
seemed like when he used his mega cannon, flamethrower, atomic blast, or whatever it is, it seemed like that actually hurts him. Did that seem right? They showed us afterwards, and he was like smoking, charred.
Yeah. It's like it's smoking through his own scales,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of crazy.
So I think that was like a good placement of like it does cost him
Yeah.
when he wants to do this mega blast, like ultimate, weapon that he possesses. It does cost him a lot, and he has to recover from it. He can't just like do one after another and like blow up entire cities like that. But it
Yeah. He's
produces
not.
basically the force of an atomic bomb when he does it.
Yeah. And that was the other cool part too, right? Is how they visualize that aspect, right? It wasn't just this like laser
Mushroom
gun
cloud, yeah.
thing. It wasn't like Superman eye beams. It wasn't anything like that. It was atomic bomb being dropped.
Yeah.
Essentially, mushroom cloud.
Huge
Bright white
shockwave.
flash,
Yeah.
shockwave, a shockwave that also levels, high rise
Structures.
buildings.
Yeah.
And that was the representation of the atom bomb, which is why it's going into the Saturday afternoon double feature featuring Oppenheimer and Godzilla Minus One. It was the
They're
action
fair.
that I was missing from Oppenheimer.
All right. The visual effects here won an Academy Award. Am I right?
It did. It won Best Visual Effects.
And they apparently did this movie for very little compared to kind of a major Hollywood movie. I think it was something like $30 or $40 million, something like that, right? Or was it less? Whatever it was,
like that.
the budget was laughable.
Yeah. This is basically a Blumhouse movie budget, right? Like,
yeah, I mean a little more than that, but yeah, it was not a huge budget, and for the most part, I feel like you couldn't tell. There was so much they did. I mean, there was so much they did that was just like looked really convincing. The way that they destroyed buildings, the way that like they went about showing you Godzilla and how he worked and things like that. I think all of that was like convincing. It felt real. It had weight to it. I didn't have any complaints around like, oh, that CG looks terrible. Like any CG they did use, I think it probably came out pretty good because I wasn't like paying attention to it.
I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think it all looked of the same world, right? Like none of it was uneven, none of it stuck out, and I was locked into the story, which is what you want from visual effects. And not that that the visual effects receded to the background, but they convinced me of the world that they were in, and they're still a joy to watch, right? That like anytime seeing Godzilla on screen was awesome, right? Like cue the music, the classic Godzilla music, and you're like, yeah, we're going in. And then seeing the master plan to take Godzilla down unfold, like all of that felt good and earned. But I would say it does. I think I see the difference between $150 million and $30 million in terms of budget. Like it doesn't feel perfect, but it was good. It was good, and probably they get the Academy Award for doing a lot with a little. I think.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. You didn't think there was some like slight downgrade in quality? I mean, it wasn't.
I don't think so.
She-Hulk.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I think some of it was like I think they probably did a lot with practical effects as well.
Yeah,
in
that's
terms
why I
of
think
like
so too. And why
destroying models and things like that. I think they probably did a lot with that. I don't know. I didn't notice. I think like I was telling you earlier about that ship scene where the ship is literally just like hurtling through the air. That looked pretty real. I was like, oh my God. And then like it just runs into a bunch of buildings and like there's a huge just like clattering of rubble everywhere that goes there, that flies up in the air and comes towards the camera. So I don't know. I thought the lighting was great. It didn't stick out of my eyes like, oh, that's clearly been pasted in by computers or whatever. I think they had time to do it and they did a good job with it. So I have no complaints about the visuals. I think they were used to great effect and great impact. Someone, I think one time maybe on Corridor Crew, they had talked about how like having Godzilla underwater actually sometimes helps. You can save money that way just because you're not having to do everything like the water is able to distort. Yeah. And so that can save money on terms of visuals, but they only did that a couple times. I didn't see that to be a big deal. When Godzilla was swimming through the water, like after he was chasing a ship, like maybe that part was a little bit wonky. Like that could have been a little bit more
Where
dynamic.
he's a little bit above the surface of the
Yeah,
water.
like you see his eyes and his nose, and he
Oh, I
just kind of
thought
looks like
those
an
were kind of the
alligator.
best. Yeah, I thought that was cool. Just like to see his eyes, as you're saying, like an alligator, like
Yeah.
hunting his prey. I thought that looked pretty cool. But that's where I'm saying it's
I think
like
that's where
the portrayal kind of outweighs any sort of visual effects limitations for me.
Yeah, like you liked getting to see Godzilla kind of on the chase like that.
Yeah, yeah. And like I totally agree with a lot of people that most monster movies, when you see the monster, it's so underwhelming that it completely undercuts everything you just watched. But I did not feel that way in this Godzilla movie. And I think I have felt that way with other more CG laced versions of Godzilla.
Yeah.
Where it's like
I just felt like it's kind of more like
it just seemed fake.
Oh. I felt like the way he swam, it felt like he was just like a model that was being pulled through water.
He might have been, actually.
Rather than creating his own like movement through the water.
Yeah,
it wasn't dynamic.
I could see that. He did not have dynamic
angry.
movement. He was not Michael Phelps in the ocean. Okay.
No, he was more just like a snake that kind of got pulled through the water. That's what it felt like to me. More like, I don't know. So I think that's maybe where they kind of lost a little bit of the budget. But again, I have no complaints around that. It didn't take me out of the scenes or anything like that. Actually, seeing his eyeballs sometimes took me out. I was like, those are weird eyeballs. So that part maybe a little bit they could have worked on. More realistic eyes would have been nice, but
I like the eyeballs.
Yeah, like they stick out.
Gives them personality.
They weren't like inset in his head. They were kind of like out.
He was like one of those stress dolls.
Yeah, a little bit.
He was under a lot of duress.
He was under stress,
and so like the eyeballs had to pop
they were
out.
Bulging. Okay.
Yeah, they're like, oh my god, come on, guys, why are you trying to sink me?
Yeah, and no blinking. He never blinked. It's fine. Whatever.
We needed an extra $100 million for eyelids. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Those are expensive.
So that's Godzilla. That's the practical effects or special effects, visual effects. I thought they did a really good job. They won an Oscar. Like, hats off to them. The thing that I really think this movie, maybe it got a lot of acclaim that I read, that I saw, and the one thing that I was a little bit disappointed in was the acting. And I don't know if this is a cultural. I don't know if this is a cultural thing. The writing was fine. I think it was just like the acting was way over the top. You know, it was like very much like, I'm so sorry, sir. Like, please forgive me. You know, like, what are we doing? And there was like a big like body
Wes walking the tightrope here.
And I switched back and forth between English and Japanese, and it was the same in both.
Oh, you watched it in English?
I watched it in both, depending kind of what I was doing. Yeah, I watched it over the course of like 2 or 3 days, so it was sort of like depending on if I could be like right in front and read the subtitles, or if I had to sort of be like watching the kid and hearing things as well.
Was the dub like perfect English, or was it Japanese people speaking English?
It sounded like
the way
native
Shogun
speakers.
did it.
I don't know. I think it sounded like native speakers. Yeah,
native speakers.
I thought the dubbing actually was pretty good. It kind of matched up with what they were saying on screen, and it got the same emotions and story. So it wasn't a bad dub at all. But that's not the point. The point is there was just a very cartoony sort of over the topness about it. It was very like theatrical, I think.
Oh yeah.
And
very stage like.
I don't know if that was like intentional, because maybe that's how the original Godzilla movies were. Like, I haven't seen those, or if this was how Japanese movies are. Like, maybe they're just theatrical and over the top, and that's what Japanese audiences want, or if or if that was just like a different choice by the actors and the director in this one. Like, I don't know. That sort of took me out of it.
It was really anime like.
Yeah,
right? I was almost expecting for like extreme close up of the face with some action lines. And maybe like the pools of water underneath the eyeballs. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Like, but I have never survived a war. At least not one involving violence. I've played the card game War, but I don't know what
Listen to
that's
the
like.
song War.
Yeah, what is it good for? Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing. Like I don't know. Like maybe this is how you respond to war.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what war merits: over the top acting. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
don't think so.
it was very anime. Like I will say though, I have seen a number of art house gems of Japanese movies, like the kind of movies that win the Palme d'Or at Cannes and like are Oscar bait, right? I've seen those movies, which are
Highbrow. You are highbrow.
very, very much more naturalistic in terms of the acting. They're actually like way more subtle,
Okay.
right?
So it is
kind of the way that we consume
movie.
Shogun,
Okay.
right? And so like I don't that type of movie also exists in Japan.
Okay. So this was a choice. This was intentional.
I think so. I think it was a choice. I feel like maybe this is what popcorn movies are like in Japan. It almost also felt a little K-drama-ish. Not that I like know K-dramas very well.
I don't know
like,
K-dramas.
Some of the stuff I've seen, like the scenes, kind of similar. Maybe, I don't know. So somebody's got to tell us. But it definitely, from our Western perspective, it was a little much.
Yeah,
that's a little much.
Yeah, we wanted it to be a little bit more naturalistic. I think, like you said,
I'm not at the back of the room. It's not like you got to shout so that I can hear your lines of dialogue.
All right, fair enough. So I do think that was a -1 for the movie.
Yeah,
that held it back. Yeah,
Godzilla +1 acting -5.
And it's silly because that doesn't mean I didn't like it.
Yeah. I was just about to say, I was still really into the characters.
Yeah.
Like, even though Shikishima is totally he's the biggest culprit of this. Like he's slamming his head to ask for forgiveness. He's slamming his head into the table. Really over the top, but I was so invested. I was so invested in him and the people around him. Right?
Yeah.
It's like I wanted him and his adopted family to make it through. And there were all people I was rooting for by the very end.
Yeah. What a ridiculous situation that he found himself in, and like sad, right? Like he's ends up kind of like living with this woman who he met on his return to, I don't know what city they were in, returns to the city. And
I think it was Tokyo.
It's Tokyo.
The Ginza in Tokyo.
She's just trying to survive. She has this baby in her arms, and she's trying to like steal food or something, and they kind of meet by happenstance, and then they just end up living together. But it's not super romantic. They're not like making out, or they don't fall in love in the show. They are in love, but in sort of a more like deep, understated, not said type of way. Like they can't say that they're in love with each other. And then you find
they're just
out
kind of supporting each other.
Yeah, and you find out like a little bit later that the baby's not even her baby. She just found the baby in the aftermath of this attack or whatever on the city, and is taking care of it because she's the only one that it has. And then he takes care of her because they don't have anybody else to go to, right? And so it's kind
his
of
family's gone.
Yeah, and so it's kind of this like they just come together because it's the right thing to do and out of duty to each other, not because they're particularly like, oh, we had ties before this situation got us into this place. And so it's a very much a found adopted family that they create, and they create like a nuclear family in a situation where they don't have nuclear ties, they don't have familial ties. And then it turns out that they actually do have feelings for each other, right? But then they can't express them because of their past trauma and all of the like
survivor's guilt.
Yeah, issue that he has, especially, and the nightmares that he has. He can't get himself to say like, I deserve a life of happiness. He doesn't feel like he does.
He was probably experiencing major ED. He just wasn't worthy yet.
It's quite possible. They don't intimate that, so I'm not sure. That's what happens.
Am I projecting? Shoot. Damn it.
Just really outed yourself here. We could be sponsored.
-1.
We could be sponsored by Hims. Give us a call if you need somebody. Or Keeps also, right? Isn't that the same thing? In one of the scenes you talked about him slamming his head on the desk or the table. He goes to like a naval office and wants information on another character that he thinks will help save the day, right? Or help him save the day. And he begs the person at the desk to help him. And the guy says, look, there's nothing I can do. We don't have updated records. A lot of things have moved around in post-war eras and yada, yada, yada. And he just like does the deepest bow he can, but of course they're not on the floor, so he has to bow on the desk front, you know, and like puts his forehead on and says, please, and he's like crying out like, help me! And the guy
slams his face into the
guy
table.
is just like, dude, like I'm not saying I wouldn't want to help you. I'm saying I can't. I literally do not have the information you need. So Brian, in your life, what is a time, or what would be a time if you haven't had this situation where you have just had to beg and grovel, put your head on a desk, slam it on the desk in order to get what you wanted?
Oh man. We're talking about actual times I should have done it?
It could be that, or it could be what would you do it for?
Or what I would do it for.
I'm more interested in what have you done this for?
So, like, speaking of ED, maybe I should have done it many times. Sorry, Anna. But really, I mean, let's be forward thinking. I think this movie, Godzilla Minus One, is forward thinking. They want something hopeful. I would walk right into Barclays Center, right, which is just 15 minutes down the block from me.
All right.
I would walk right into Barclays Center.
Walking is 15 minutes.
Yeah, walking is 15 minutes. I would barge in, find the desk of Joe Tsai, who I think is the owner.
He's the owner of the Nets, yep. And the Liberty.
Huge faceplant into a cinder block. Not even his desk. I'll put a cinder block on top of his desk. Huge faceplant. Onegaishimasu! Bam! Please trade Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks. Please.
Is he the
I know
piece?
they're crosstown rivals, but we must give hope to this city of misery. Please.
So it's a team effort here. Like, we're going to combine the Nets and the Knicks into one to win it for New York.
We only need one piece from them. Like, we don't need the whole. We don't need the full amalgam.
If you put Bridges in there, you can't start OG though.
Oh no, we can.
Okay.
Oh, we can. Because actually, many of the starters that we saw in the playoffs are in fact bench players.
Okay, so you bench DiVincenzo.
Or you bench Josh Hart, one or the other.
Well, no, because OG would have been the 3 instead of Josh Hart. So you've got Brunson,
move around this lineup.
Brunson,
friend.
Bridges, OG. That's your 1, 2, 3. Who's your 4?
Julius Randle.
Okay, so you're keeping Randle.
Mitchell Robinson.
5, Mitchell Robinson. That's a pretty dominant starting 5.
That's a killer starting 5.
Yeah, you can.
And then you have Josh Hart coming off the bench.
Well, I think you'd have to trade all of your bench to get. So I don't think you'd have Josh Hart.
No, we got draft picks. Onegaishimasu. Please accept the draft picks. Please. Okay, Wes, who are you face planting for?
Okay, who am I face planting?
Are you asking for forgiveness or are you begging for help?
I'm begging for help. But I haven't thought this one through. So let me think for a second. What I would bang my head on the floor for?
Are you going to Aero Mexico? Onegaishimasu, por favor.
No.
Give me my credits back.
No, remember in our last episode we said they were destroyed by my evil twin. So there's no Aero Mexico. There's no customer service.
They don't even exist.
Yeah, they have
decimated like the Ginza streets.
They've merged with JetBlue. That was their fate. They got bought by JetBlue. They no longer exist. What would be I would beg for this? It's really hard to think of something that, oh man, just what would I have to do? I think it would be like, how do you, like, please, Kaya and Eliza, please just take your nap when it's nap time. Because everybody is happier when that happens. And if there's a point at which, you're
including
out,
them.
Yeah, absolutely, but mostly for me. Because here's what happens with kids, and I'm sure people have heard this before. but you take them out to lunch, right? And their nap time is usually after
Are
lunch.
you dating your children, Wes?
No.
We gotta talk.
You take
Taking
them
them
out
out to
somewhere
lunch?
you get them lunch, but they fall asleep in the car on the way back because it's nap time. It's 1:00 or 1:15 or whatever, and you've had a slightly later lunch than you wanted. Probably because they were fucking fighting you on going to the bathroom before you left in the first place. So they're also the reason why you're late. And so
Oh my God.
they of course are tired, right? They're
Here we
having a
go with the
lunch
blames. Go ahead. Come on.
they're tired, and they do what any kid does. They start nodding off and falling asleep in the car. But in Austin, you're never driving that far. The furthest place you're driving is 30 to 40 minutes, maybe tops, right? And so it takes them 10 minutes to
Also
fall
their
asleep.
fault.
No, not their fault.
Also, we can't go anywhere out of Austin.
So they go to sleep for 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the car. They get home, and you're like, great, you're tired, you're clearly sleepy, like you can't get them up to get them out of the car seat. You put them in the bed, they're awake. They're not sleeping. So now they're just like up, and you're like, okay, I have a choice. I can, try to force them to go to sleep, which not going to work because they already had their 15-minute nap. So they had a power nap. They're good to go. Or you can take them out of the crib and just be like, okay, I guess we're doing this without a nap today or without a significant nap today. And when kids only have a 15-minute nap, when they're used to taking a 2-hour nap or a 3-hour nap, let me tell you, things get hairy real quick. So
Cue the music. Dun, 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 dun.
Kaya and Eliza, please take your nap. Don't just take a nap in the car. Don't fall asleep in the car ever. Just take a nap when we get home. Please wait.
All I want to see in life is this defeated father at his last resort, slamming his face
Do not
into
fall
the
asleep.
floorboards at the feet of his own children.
Don't go to sleep in the car, please.
No. What? Why are you making it a smooth ride?
It doesn't work. I've tried. I
Come
tried
on,
putting the windows down, turning the radio up a little bit louder, not too loud because I don't want them to get ear damage or hearing damage. But trying to keep them up, trying to tap them, trying to wake them up, talk to them.
Yo, you gotta go to Old City, man. Drive down those cobblestones.
I've hit those brakes a little bit harder than I needed to on a stoplight. Nothing. It just.
You mean even slamming the brakes and them flying through the windshield, they're still asleep? Man,
dead as a door, dude. They're so dead. But then, so you're like, clearly they're tired, and you get home and you're like,
wow.
They're gonna sleep.
We can't just say that they're so dead after we. Onegaishimasu! I beg for forgiveness.
You're like, they're gonna sleep. They're so tired, and you get home and they're like, no, we're so excited. Let's play. And you're like, what? I couldn't get you awake at all, and now you're.
Do you have to take them to lunch? Do you have to have them ride in the car? Which apparently is the true culprit. It is the sleepy bus that you're putting them on. They are set up to fail, Wesley.
They were. It was my fault. I'm sorry.
You got to save that face plant.
Yeah,
save that face plant.
We can't just not go to lunch ever again. It's just not a reasonable thing.
Wes needs to live.
We were supposed to talk about the over elaborate ending plan of Godzilla Minus One, but I think a lot of people still need to see it, so I don't actually want to talk about it. Plus, I gotta go. It's actually a time for us to go to lunch and have a dinner at or a lunch at Jen's mom's house. So
all right, cue the Godzilla music or Pharaoh Monch remix rather. Dun 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 dun.
You have to share that with me. I don't know which. Oh, that one. Okay, I know that one.
Dun 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 dun. And maybe we should talk about the ending on Instagram.
Yeah,
it was
a crazy ending. It was cool, but I thought it was overdone. I think it was just overly complicated and wouldn't have been pulled off. I told Brian I really doubted that Godzilla would just allow that to happen. He sort of they needed a lot of cooperation on Godzilla's part for this plan to work.
How did they have time to tie up all those tugboats? How did that happen?
That was immediate.
However, I will say I'm just glad they had a cool plan and turned into a heist movie real quick.
Yeah.
A plan that was, rooted in some like vague science. That was cool.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about dropping a bomb on Godzilla.
Yeah. Well, which we had seen didn't work. He absorbs that radiation. Right?
Yeah. Well,
he absorbs it.
He got hit by a mine, but they didn't drop a giant
Yeah,
bomb
I guess.
on
Like it
Godzilla.
hurts
Right,
him,
it
but I
wasn't-
think in some ways like the energy blasts give him more energy somehow. That's what I was taking away from that, but maybe that's not true.
Oh, I didn't read it. I
Okay.
didn't read it that way.
Okay,
I thought
okay.
he got hurt but just regenerated.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
But maybe it makes him stronger. But in
Maybe.
any case, they tried to outsmart Godzilla, which I thought was a cool and proper ending to Godzilla -1, Japan +1, for the citizens coming together and coming up with
Hey,
a
don't spoil it for
plan
them.
that was
Don't spoil it for them.
very interesting.
All right. Friends, we're out of here. We'll talk to you later. Godzilla. Kai, you want to say bye? Say bye.
Okay, take your nap.
Say hi, Uncle Brian.
Hi, Uncle Brian.
Okay, wait. you can't hear.
Hello.
Okay, he's going to say hi.
Hello, Kaya.
Can you see him?
Ohayo gozaimasu.
All right. Talk to you later, buddies.
Sayonara, friend.